everybody, welcome. It announces that there's a recording in progress, and I feel like that's the first, this is like the 5th Zoom meeting I've been in today, and they all said that, and I'm like, is that like a new thing? I have no idea.
Don't forget to enable interpretation.
Ed, did you hear that?
Thank you for the reminder, Lorna. Done.
Hi, everybody. We're just going to let you all come in right now. And Jordan, I see you. Hump day. It is most definitely the hump day. I'm feeling it big time today. Everybody is muted upon entry only because it's not that we don't want you to talk, because we love hearing you. The reason you're muted is because a lot of meetings have been getting Zoom bombers. And what we're finding is the way to avoid Zoom bombers is to keep people muted until you are called upon. You will always be called upon. We get to you all. We promise that we do. It's just, we don't want it. The stuff that's been happening is so evil that we just don't want to ever risk our meetings being taken over by people who seem to have nothing better to do with their time than spread evil. So as usual, we are offering interpretation. So what I'd like to do is to ask Lorna, I was going to ask Ed, but instead I'm going to ask Lorna, who is our interpreter, to please explain how you select your language in Spanish. Thank you. So welcome everybody. So good to see you all. There's as with every week, we have new people that I've never met before. So we're so happy to have you. We've been meeting since last summer, and we're just growing and growing as we get closer and closer to the start of the self-determination program going statewide. So let me introduce myself to those of you who have maybe never met me. My name is Judy Mark. I am the president of Disability Voices United and the mom of a self-determination participant who is an adult served by a regional center in the Los Angeles area. I have been working in the self-determination world for a very long time. As an advocate, as part of the original group that got the self-determination law passed in 2013, and have been active in getting it implemented ever since. This is my 6th Zoom meeting or phone call today on the self-determination program. So that should tell you how much is happening right now. There is a heck of a lot happening right now. And it is really a definite, it's a lot going on, guys. So what I'm going to do is just spend a few minutes, because we spent our whole last meeting talking a lot about the self-determination program. About the budget. However, we met on a Wednesday afternoon, and the language released about the self-determination program was issued overnight that night. And I didn't see it till I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, I don't wake up that early. It was probably 8 o'clock in the morning that I saw it. And had literally spent almost every waking moment between Thursday morning and today trying to change the language that was issued by the governor on the self-determination program. So I wasn't planning on doing another talk about the budget today, but unfortunately the timing necessitates it, because there's a lot of problematic things there. However, I will tell you that after the 4 other meetings I've had today, or 5 other meetings I've had today, I can tell you that things are improving. But it still is what they're doing. Okay, so let me tell you. Let me walk. I thought about like, how do I do this? And so I've decided to do a shortcut, which is I'm going to walk you through what's called trailerville language. Jordan, did you have a quick question first? Here, hold on. Let me unmute you. Go ahead, Jordan. No, you can't unmute. Go ahead. Try it again. There we go.
I know it's not quick. I just raised it early because when you're done, everybody raises at the same time, and then I lose it. Then the 90 minutes end. So when you do Q&A, I want my hand to be up there so I can get to it first.
Awesome.
Otherwise, I lose it till next week. So
okay. And is your Q&A related, Jordan, to the budget or to generally about the self-determination program? Unmute.
It is based on the budget.
Okay, good.
I can ask it now if you want.
Yes, ask it now, and I will make sure to address it.
Okay. My issue is that if I am someone is going into self-termination program, and and they go with a vendor, we'll say GT
for the FMS,
GT, for example, and you have a staff who works X number of hours with you, and they go at the co-model. We'll use the co-model. That's by the way, I'm Jordan Feinstock, Vice Chair of the North LA County Regional Centers Advisory Board. Thought I'd introduce myself real quick. Jordan Feinstock. Used to be the chair, now I'm vice chair. But if you're going to self-termination, and as most people have told me, well, a lot of people, I know Harvey doesn't like it. Sorry, Harvey, but most people go in as a co-model. Now, if you go in as a co-model and hire a staff, and they work X number of hours, say 25, 30 hours a week with you, and then take another job with, say, GT, another client in the co-model, and do 20 hours with that person, that would bring your staff into overtime. Because they're doing 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, that would bring them into overtime, which means that somebody, usually the person that they see in the morning, say they see somebody for 6 hours in the morning, 7 hours in the evening, the person in the morning usually gets the free ride of no overtime because they fill out their payroll first. So I'm wondering how to avoid that overtime. What I was told was you could hire them instead of as an employee, you hire them as a vendor, and that becomes a whole 1099 as opposed to a W-2. So what I was running into was that my support staff has another client. They're both in the co-model. By having two clients in the co-model with GT, it'll bring it well over the 8 hours a day, or at least 40 hours a week. I mean, someone has to pay overtime. It was budgeted for that. And then she said, I can go in as a vendor. Well, I said, if you're a vendor, then you don't get all the benefits. You don't get the insurance. You don't get all those insurance benefits and everything, and liability, because that liability and insurance is gone once you're a vendor. So she said, well, then you can pay me more. And then I have to cover that. So it's just a big mess.
Yeah,
so I don't know how to handle that.
Yeah, you're not the only one who raised this issue, and it's not the only idiot. So that is not related to actually the legislation that's moving forward. So what I want to do is put that question on hold. It'll be the first question that we answer after we get done talking about the state budget. And because I think you were thinking of your individual budget, it is an excellent question, Jordan. I see the same issue coming up when you're talking about commingling of IHSS hours and like supported living hours and the traditional system. And what I'm hoping is that somebody who's an FMS, we have a lot of FMSs on the call today. I mean, this is something that a lot of you are facing on how to deal with this. So, all right. So let me do this, and then I'm going to go back to your question first, Jordan. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, first, I'm just going to explain the process in case those of you who weren't here last week. So the way it works is that the governor has requested $10.2 million to be spent on the self-determination program. 80% of that, or $7.8 million, is being spent on increasing regional center operations to provide regional centers with staff that DDS is calling participant choice specialists. And these specialists will be 60 staff located around the state. I'm assuming larger regional centers will get more staff than smaller ones. And that these specialists are supposed to be assisting people to move through the self-determination program more quickly. There's also $2.5 million budgeted for person-centered planning expenses for new participants moving into the program. So that means those of you in the phase-in program cannot be accessing those funds unless you never accessed them before, meaning if you've already accessed them once, you cannot access them again. I actually just got this question the other day saying, what, do I have to spend this $2,500 by July 1st? No, of course you do not. If you have not yet transitioned into the program, you can continue to access these funds, even if you were selected for the phase-in. I must say, I'm a little tired of people making up answers when you don't know the answer. Regional centers should ask DDS those questions because that is the correct answer. You do not lose your right to get this because you were picked for the phase-in. If you have never used it before, you cannot use it twice, okay? You cannot use it a second time. And you cannot use the balance either. If you've already transitioned into the program and you need to do a person-centered plan, you need to use money from your budget, all right? So, so there's $2.5 million for that. Don't freak out and say that's all, because what if more, that's about 1,000, they're estimating 1,000 people will use the $2,500 that you can have to go through into the program. Don't worry about that. They're making up to $2,500 available to anyone who's transitioning into the program. They are guessing that only 1,000 people will transition in the next year. I hope we prove them wrong. I hope we prove way more than 1,000 people move into the program, and there will be funding available for that. That's just their guess. They're also guessing that regional centers will hire 60 staff and spend $7.8 million. I seriously doubt that's going to happen. I seriously doubt that. So, you know, they move money around all the time, and budgets are just estimates, just like they are for our individual budgets, right? But what they are, you know, they have to make some guesstimates of how we're going to be spending money in the state. The last little piece of money that they're asking for is $600,000, which will be for 2 contracts that could be for the same organization or more than one. One contract will be to develop a statewide orientation program for participants that anybody can take so that you don't have to go to orientation at your own regional center. They will be consistent. And the second will be to develop a statewide training for regional center staff, for participant choice specialists, and others who are professionals at regional centers to take. So these contracts will be made, if the budget passes, these contracts will be made available through what's called an RFP. And an RFP is a request for proposals. And that will be made available sometime soon. You know, if the budget doesn't actually begin until July 1st, DDS never does anything quickly, so it's likely that it could be August or even September before they issue the RFP. Then they will probably have a 30-day period to answer it, and then they will have to negotiate the contract, and then they start working. I am going to guess that the contract will not even begin until sometime towards the end of the year, which means that the product of the orientation may not be out till sometime in the first quarter of next year. So obviously that is something we want to, so in our advocacy, we will be pushing for DDS to get this RFP done, you know, within a few weeks in July, but don't hold your breath. It is never a good thing to ever hold your breath with DDS. So the reason I wanted to give you those dollar amounts is because the way the budget works is they have dollar amounts that they ask for, and then they have something called trailer bill language. And trailer bill language is the language that follows and trails the budget to explain how that money should be spent. So instead of me walking you through only the language of the trailer bill that the governor offered, I'm going to walk you through how DVU is responding to that trailer bill language. Now, that doesn't mean that all of you are going to agree with us. I've already had some groups say that they would like some changes to it. please do not think that what the DVU language is going to become law. We are just a small little advocacy group, and we are relatively powerless. You guys give us power. So, we will do our best to advocate for at least some of this to go through, but you'll see in the way I'm going to share this document how it will be doing it. Someone was asking me if the orientation will be offered in languages other than the English. Yes, Lisa, it will be. It will be offered in what's called threshold languages. So threshold means that there's a certain percentage of people in the state that speak that language, and therefore Vietnamese will definitely be one. I can't name them all off the top of my head, but certainly Spanish is in there since that's a majority language in the state. And I think that there's Korean, Japanese, Mandarin Chinese, I think is one, maybe Tagalog. I can't remember what they are, but DDS has already translated the current set of orientation materials in the threshold languages. So if you went onto their website, you'd be able to see what those languages are. Okay, so let me share my screen and show you so you should know that these are proposed, what we call amendments. Amendments are changes to trailer bill language, and these are endorsed by the two organizations, Disability Voices United and Disability Rights California, who are the two most active organizations, advocacy organizations, who work from the perspective of individuals with disabilities and family members. So the way I'm going to walk through this is, actually, this should probably be in red now that I think about it. So, so anything that you're going to see in red is the language that we at DVU and DRC are suggesting, and the language that you're going to see in black is the original trailer bill language from Governor Newsom. So we are, and I'll explain this later, we are asking for $500,000 to be added to the self-determination budget to cover the creation of the Office of the Self-Determination Program Ombudsperson. I'm going to explain a lot more about that later. And then the rest of this is the trailer bill provisions to amend that Welfare and Institution Section 4685.8. That is the self-determination law. All right. So let me move through this. So you guys are getting a law class here, a way to read public policy. You'll become experts on this. So what you're going to see is the regular language that just looks like regular language, regular words, is the original self-determination law. When you see something crossed out, it means that there's changes recommended for the law. And when you see things underlined, it means those are additions to the law. So I want to walk through this first paragraph because I have just been receiving too many emails about this already, and it's a little frustrating. And if I could ask Ed to monitor the chat, because I don't have the chat open while I'm sharing screen, so that I can answer the questions. If you do pose the questions to me, please, later.
May I pose one now, Judy?
Sure.
Someone's asking if we can access the document. My suspicion is because this is a draft document, we may not be able to share it publicly yet, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, go ahead and put your email address in the chat, okay? So it's not something like what you guys should know when you're posting like this kind of stuff, things move and change on a very fast basis. So I just want people to know that I've had 5 conversations today, and a lot of this is changing already. And I'll try to point that out to you, okay? So, all right, so we are, so you'll see here that I'm not going to go over every line that's been crossed out, but just as you're seeing as an example, that Governor Newsom and DDS have said, let's take out the whole section on the phase-in period because that has ended. And that, in fact, they say right here in black and white, as of July 1st, 2021, the program will begin to be available on a voluntary basis to all regional center consumers who are eligible for the self-determination program. So I have heard from a number of people on the State Council's self-determination Facebook page that their regional centers are saying, we haven't seen it anywhere on the DDS website that the self-determination program begins on July 1st. And that is because the legislature needs to pass this law to make that happen. I can promise you that I can guarantee you that this will happen. And the reason why is because when Governor Newsom puts language out there, unless there are hordes of people opposing it, it is going to become law. And right now, everybody that I know of supports this. The regional centers support it, that the family advocates and self-advocates support this. The legislature supports it. So since everybody's supporting a July 1st start date, it is going to happen. So all of you who are watching this now, take a picture of the screen right now with your little phone. And if they need to see that, they can. I can also, when I have a break, I'm going to put a link in the chat of the original trailer bill language that you can also show them. That's on the DDS website, and that's probably a more persuasive thing than sending them a picture from your phone. So just a lot of this language that's been crossed out is just relevant to the phase-in period. So then you're going to see, so this next section is what are the responsibilities of the Department of Developmental Services in creating the self-determination program. So we've taken out the whole section on the phase-in period, and we're saying that they need to set targets and benchmarks that's set forth in this next section, and I will, when we get to that section. But that is, those targets and benchmarks, by the way, they are for regional centers. So regional centers are going to have a whole set of things that they have to do, and the Department of Developmental Services is in charge of making sure they meet those targets and benchmarks. Anything changed here? There's a couple of very big changes. The first change you'll see in E, which is requiring that independent facilitators must meet standards and certification requirements established by the department. And these standards and certification requirements will not be set until after this law passes. So obviously that's maybe a concern to some independent facilitators who believe, you know, will we be able to get paid? Will we be able to work while the department is establishing these things? I have urged independent facilitators to reach out to the department with their concerns because I share that concern. What are those, and to have a role in what those standards and certification requirements are going to be if in fact this law passes. Financial management services agencies are also going to be newly required to meet standards and certification requirements, which we don't completely understand what that's about because they already have to meet tons of standards and certification requirements in the directives that have been sent out by DDS. So I'm going to assume that they're just going to, that whatever they put, they just wanted to put this into the law as opposed to just having a directive. I'm not overly concerned that they're going to put additional sort of certifications on the FMSs who already have to meet so many requirements. But you'll see some issues with them in a little bit. Okay, so this is where I'm going to talk to you about the term cost effective. You will see littered throughout the governor's trailer bill language that they've added the term cost effectiveness all over the place. So it starts here with H, where DDS is supposed to require that the self-determination program has long-term cost effectiveness and sustainability. So what you should know is cost effectiveness and sustainability are code words for, we don't want you to cost very much, and we're worried that you're going to cost too much. So let's figure out ways for you to cost less, all right? You should know that the traditional system is already required to be cost effective. So what does cost-effective mean? So you should know, so this underline, so you know how we cross this out? That's actually part of the original trailer bill language, and we are recommending it be deleted. I don't know that we're going to win this, guys, but we are recommending that. So they're talking about these sections and other parts of the Land Term Act, which say that in the traditional system, regional centers must vendor the most cost-effective goods and services to help their consumers. And what cost-effective means is that if you have two service providers, each of whom are providing the same quality of services for the same level of need, that you should pick the cheaper one. But it doesn't mean that if you have 20 different providers, you have to go with the cheapest. You have to be able to compare the quality of the service and the needs of the participant. So if you have a service provider in the traditional system who provides independent living services, and yet the person who has the need is deaf and requires a person who is fluent in American Sign Language, they are not at the same quality level as a regular independent living services provider. You may need to pay more to get that extra special level of service, all right? So you're looking at quality, you're looking at the individual specific needs. And so we wanted to go back to the original Land Term Act and say it this way, which is requiring IPP teams, and we wanted to make it very clear, it's when they're developing the individual budget, not anything else, to determine the services, supports, and goods necessary for each consumer based on the needs and preferences of the consumer and where appropriate the consumer's family, and the effectiveness of each option in meeting the goals specified in the IPP and the cost effectiveness of each option. So we're honestly, it's kind of duplicative because you remember everybody that the way that the individual budget is created is by looking at the traditional system. And since the traditional system is already has to rely on the cost-effective standard, then you're already taking into account and you're just doing it again in the self-determination program. So we feel this is kind of unnecessary, and we just want to make sure it doesn't create more barriers. Here's another section that they have added at the department. It's to allow the department to review final individual budgets which are at or above a spending threshold determined by the department of all individual budgets and use information from its review in the aggregate to develop additional program guidance and ensure compliance with federal and state laws and other requirements. So what does that mean? So a threshold, because that's not very plain language, a threshold is like a level. It's an amount. And we don't know what that amount is. We've gotten very little detail from the department on this. But what we think the amount will be is something, so for people who have very high budgets who are spending a lot of money, the DDS wants to review a lot of them, not one person's budget, but everybody's budget who exceeds a certain amount of money so that they can figure out what it is and why it is that their budget is so large. And to explain this. So my concern with this, honestly, we didn't ask to delete it, but my concern with this is that why are we getting picked on in the self-determination program? Because we have the same, there are very large budgets in the traditional system too. And why are they reviewing only the ones in self-determination? And I was told by DDS that they will also be launching an effort to look at large budgets in the traditional system too. So if that is the case, we are now entering a very different era in our entitlements. And we can certainly approach that in another way. But for those of you who work with individuals with very significant needs, who have large budgets, we need to be getting prepared for this. They also put in here, which we're recommending to remove because it didn't make sense to us, but I don't think we're going to win on this one either, is having the regional center be yet another layer of review to look at those larger budgets as well. And that regional centers step back and say, why is it that you have this large budget? And then, they're probably going to have to send some sort of accounting or report to DDS about it. It's, to me, it is the opposite of what we should be doing, but I have a feeling you guys should know that what is driving all these concerns is coming from the governor's office. It's not, so, don't blame me. I know a lot of people have gotten mad at me. Don't blame me. Don't even blame the regional centers, guys. This is coming from way up there. So if we have problems with this, we got to go, really at the high levels here. I'm not even sure this is, how high this goes.
Judy, may I break in for a moment? There's a lot of conversation in chat regarding what is defined as a large budget. What do they consider a large budget?
That's a great question, and we don't know the answer yet. I have directly asked that question to DDS, and what they're thinking is not a dollar amount, but a percentage. So if you take the all the budgets in the self-determination program and put them in a chart from least to most, they'll look at the top 20% or something like that. So the 20% with the highest budgets in the self-determination program will be the ones they look at. So it will actually not be everybody. So they're not going to be like anybody over $100,000 will be looked at, because if tons of people have $100,000 budgets, they're not going to be able to do that. So what they're saying is going to be the people that top percentage, the top 20%. I've heard 25 and 20%. I've never heard them say like 5% or, so that's a lot. Top 20%. That's a hell of a lot of people. So that would be, there's 500 less, there's about 600 people in the program, 588 or something as of today. And of the 588 people, that means that they're going to be looking at 120 of them. That's a lot of people for them to be exploring their budgets. That's just as today.
Judy, may I ask a couple of more questions before we move on?
Sure.
Just pursuant to some of the things that you've just asked. Mark, just gone over. Mark asks, there was a phase-in period already in a pilot format. Why would the governor suggest this now?
That's a great question. So they're asking it now because I'm going to stop sharing this for a second and share a different fun document. And it is because of this that they're doing it. So I know this looks really grainy, and that's because the actual underlying slide was never shared with us. So I just took a photo of it with my phone. So you're seeing a photo from my phone here. So this is as of March 2021, how they're looking at the monthly. So these are the people who are not the pilot participants. These are all the other people who've gone into the program. And what you'll see here is, so I just want you to look at this last two columns. So and they broke it down, but I'll just look right now at just the total amount. So these individuals, these 360 people were spending in the traditional system in the past year, $3,401 per month. And now in the self-determination program, they're spending $4,127 per month, which is like a 24% increase or something like that. This is what they're worried about, that this program is supposed to be what's termed cost neutral. And that means that overall, not one person at a time, but overall, everybody's spending is supposed to be about the same. And I was in a very, very long meeting with the Department of Developmental Services today, as well as other advocates, talking specifically about this, because there is an effort to try to define what unmet need is in a way that is, I believe, going to be problematic. And what we were universally saying, and when I say universally, there was regional centers, ARCA was there, regional center executive directors. We had many self-advocates and family members and other interested parties. And every single one of us said together that this is not enough people, 360 people is not enough people to make any judgments, and that we have to wait till a lot more people come in, and that we need to look at the underlying reasons of why budgets have gone up, because maybe it's because there are people who've been traditionally, they're Latinos, African Americans, Asians, who have been underserved in the traditional system. And that is why their budgets have gone up. One of the things that I pointed out on my meeting today, which I think is very interesting, is this is the amount that in the traditional system, these 360 people were authorized. So for example, there was an authorization on average of all those people of $4,578 per month. That means these are the services that you should be receiving in the traditional system. And in fact, what's actually being spent in the self-determination program is less than that. And what we talk about a lot is, why is it that somebody is authorized? So if you look here, there's an authorization of $4,578, but these same 360 people only used 3,401 of those. Look at that giant gap. It means people were offered services that they couldn't use for whatever reason. Maybe nobody spoke their language. Maybe the services weren't appropriate for them. Maybe the services were segregated. Like for my son, he hates segregated programs. And so he didn't use a bunch of his services because it was segregated. So I have been arguing, look at this gigantic gap between what's been authorized and what's been spent. And let's get to the bottom of that, okay? So I'm gonna stop that and hope that you can now realize why is it that we're being forced and tortured to discuss this.
And if I may add, pursuant to that, Judy, there have been just a couple of good questions that I'd like to lead up to one really good question.
Okay.
Just to clarify, Jordan says regarding the date that the SDP is opening up to everyone. So it's not June 7th?
It is not June 7th. Yeah. Thank you for asking that it's not June 7th anymore, even though that's what DDS has been promising all along. DDS felt it was a clean thing to just make it July 1st, because most regional centers do not transition people into the program until the first of the month of the next month, number one. Number two, it is the first day of the new fiscal year when the budget will be passed. And number three, it is the day that the new self-determination waiver or contract with the federal government goes into effect. So we're fine with that.
Thank you for clarifying that, Judy. The fabulous Molly Kennedy asks, can the regional center look at your spending plan and decide it's not cost effective and therefore make you change it, kind of pursuant to what we were just talking about regarding budgets?
I will get to that. That language is in here. I'll get to that in a moment, Molly. Excellent question.
Thank you for that, Judy. So just a couple of things. Farzana says that it seems as though they do not want self-determination to be successful. And Jan adds, who can we email and call in Sacramento? So that might be something we address a little later, but I just want to let you know that folks are clamoring to know. That's great.
That's great. You guys are amazing. I have to tell you, for a person like me who has worked in public policy my entire career, to have all these people want to talk about public policy, it's like I'm giddy about this. So I'm so happy that you guys are willing to sit and let me explain trailer bill language to you.
And I just want to make sure you caught that, folks, that Judy will be telling you who you can call, who you can contact later on.
Yeah, I'm not really sure yet, but we'll figure that out. Okay, so moving on, remember, this is all the original language. Here so here's where here's the definition of the independent facilitator. I'm sorry that this is highlighted yellow. I honestly cannot figure out why. But this is the definition in the original statute or law. Statute means law. And so they had, the governor has added, independent facilitators shall meet standards and certification requirements established by the department. And we would like them to add, which shall ensure equitable access to facilitators for diverse consumers. We're very concerned that they're going to put into place some standard or certification that will be completely unavailable to certain people. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a self-determination participant and you speak Hmong, and you absolutely need an independent facilitator who speaks Hmong. But that independent facilitator maybe can't access, can't get that certification because they can't get the training in Hmong. So we want to make sure that whatever these requirements are not so onerous, are not so difficult that anybody who's willing to go through some relatively simple and straightforward training program can get certified. All right, moving on. All right, here's one. So this is all the responsibilities of the participants. So here they say, oh, I should have made this in red. Sorry, I'm editing right in front of you guys. So here is, the participant shall receive an orientation which meets the standards set by or developed by the department. So this is that $600,000 in contracts that I talked to you about, where the standards, so DDS is gonna contract with an organization to create the orientation, and then we'll ultimately approve the orientation. And so therefore, the participant can just have that orientation if they want, or they can go to a special meeting that their regional center hosts. We've just been hearing a lot of differences in the way orientations have been run. Once again, this is probably the most important thing for us in all of our advocacy. It's weird that it wasn't read. So the governor has added this part, which says, so the participant shall only purchase services and supports necessary to implement their IPP and which are consistent with the requirements of the cost effectiveness stuff. So it's that cost effectiveness language that I told you about, right? So while we were not nearly as concerned as cost effective being related to how the individual budget is developed, because the traditional system already has to abide by that, we are gravely concerned about this because this relates to the spending plan. So one of our concerns is that regional centers will require participants, let's say you put in your spending plan that you want to take a karate class. Our regional independent center is going to say, we want you to go look out for 5 different karate classes and pick the cheapest one. Even if that cheapest one may not be able to provide that service to a person with a developmental disability, even if that one is far away. I mean, to us, this will literally kill the self-determination program. And we have made it incredibly clear to DDS that this is unacceptable to us. I have a feeling we will win on this one. I'm not sure, I've been trying to be honest with you about what I think we can win and what we can't win. And I think we have gotten our point. If you are going to be writing DDS about anything, I suggest you write about this. And I will maybe help you because the way you write about things is you actually have to scroll back up and figure out where it is in the first place. It's so horrible. I'm not even going to go back, but basically I'll be able to get you guys some sample language about what you could say to DDS about this piece. And believe me, if all you said is, do not make spending plans subject to the cost effectiveness requirement, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Here's one more that I just want to let you know, which we're actually very supportive of. is that anybody in the self-determination program, including children who may not be eligible for Medi-Cal because of their income, will be required to go into Medi-Cal. So that the state can get matching funds from the federal government for the dollars that you're spending on your self-determination program. So that means that people who are undocumented, who are not eligible for Medi-Cal, they don't have to worry about it. I mean, obviously it does create some privacy issues because regional centers never ask people whether they're documented or not. And so we want to just make sure in the way that this is implemented is that people can still have their privacy and just be able to check off a box saying my child or I am not eligible for Medi-Cal, and that's it. And you don't have to explain why you're not eligible. I want to mention this term institutional deeming. It's the most evil term ever and needs to be revised. Institutional deeming applies only to children who can get on Medi-Cal just based on their disability and not based on their income. And so this is a really excellent way to receive more money to the state for the services we receive. And it is, but I want to point out this one little piece here with the assistance of the regional center. So I can tell you my son was institutionally deemed many, many years ago. He's now 24, so probably when he was 5. And it has, until he was 18, it was just a nightmare. Every single year reapplying for Medi-Cal. Los Angeles County has a super incompetent Medi-Cal agency that is constantly losing the reapplications. And when the parents have to submit their tax returns, even though their tax returns are irrelevant to the determination of the person's ability to get Medi-Cal. So it is a very frustrating process in many parts of the state. And so what I'm saying to you is this is a huge deal that that DDS is requiring regional centers to actually help us get on Medi-Cal, because I had to deal with it all by myself and that was really, really hard. All right, so moving on. This is about the pilot project, the 20-year pilot project, which now all of the people in the pilot project have moved into the self-determination program. So they don't need that in law anymore. And here's a section that is talking about the funds that are received because the people in the pilot project are now part of the federal waiver. And there's a list of things on how those monies can be spent by the local advisory committees. And they've added a couple of things related to service access and equity and to reduce disparities. That regional centers must be putting it applied to operations to increase support for transitioning to the self-determination program, and that the statewide self-determination advisory committee can also receive funds from federal participation funds. This cross out is just related to the phase-in period. So I want to just talk to you about what we changed here. So they continue to put in the term cost effectiveness all over the place. And so we wanted to stop, we wanted them to stop with the cost effectiveness because people were very stressed out about this. And so this is, so what we've done here is we're documenting, what we're saying is we want you to, the IPP team, to document why there was an increase or a decrease in the budget instead of looking at cost effectiveness, so that over time we can analyze it. And one of the things we talked about today in our meeting with DDS is we were saying to them there needs to be a study done. There needs to be some sort of research looking into this once there's enough participants in the program. So we don't know how we're going to end up with that, but that was many, many hours of work today. The other thing that's very important to us is that they put the terms of what the spending plan is in law. So spending plan is literally, it could be changed tomorrow because it's just been issued by directive. And so this definition of the spending plan is in a directive that DDS issued a couple of years ago. And we want to put it in law so that nobody can mess with it. So what a lot of the rest of what you're going to be seeing here is our effort at DVU and DRC to try to put timelines on regional centers to get back to us on a range of important issues. And so here is the first example where when people want to change their spending plan and transfer funds from one category to another. For those of you who've not gone into the self-determination program or had the orientation, you're probably very confused right now. And I don't want to actually spend a lot of time talking about this, but we're just basically saying you have to get back to us, regional center, within 5 days instead of letting it sit out there sometimes for 6 months. We then add lots more. So this is now the section. So we've heard what the department's responsibility is, what the participant's responsibility is. And now this last section is what are the responsibilities of regional centers in implementing the self-determination program. So this needs a little dash. So this first one was brought in by the governor by saying that the regional centers must meet certain targets and benchmarks, such as timely enrollment, diversity of clients served, reduction of disparities in the individual budget of participants, and they will be eligible to receive more money from DDS if they exceed these targets. So for us, we were very happy with that, but we felt that some of those targets need to be laid out in this trailer bill language. What I'm going to say to you is highly unlikely that this is going to happen, but at least we've laid it out there. And you'll see that's coming up soon. They also said that they want regional centers to develop and implement an outreach and training plan to provide information about the self-determination program to diverse consumers served by the regional center. And we are very happy with this too, but we wanted to make sure, you could be a regional center and you could develop and implement an outreach and training plan that doesn't actually get to everybody. So we want to require regional centers to implement this plan for everyone, including those who live in congregate settings. So you should know that people who live in kind of institutional settings like ICF or even a hospital or even really, like a behavioral group home, they are not eligible for the self-determination program because they do not live in an environment that gives them choice and control over their lives. However, they are allowed to go into the self-determination program if in fact they are hoping to move out of that setting within the next 90 days. So it is really important for people to understand that they can use self-determination to move out. And we also say that it should be in plain language and threshold languages. They also, once again, talk about the cost effectiveness, and we've just deleted that language. So remember, this is still the responsibilities of regional centers. This is all in the law, in the original law. And we've added a whole bunch more responsibilities for regional centers. We want to require regional centers to train all service coordinators and fair hearing specialists in the principles of self-determinations, how the program works, and on the rights of consumers and families, and that the training should be conducted in collaboration with the local advisory committees. We are saying that regional centers should conduct participant orientations at least twice a month at various times and days for the first 2 years of statewide implementation. That they should, and here's where those timelines come in, and for number 10, certify the individual budget or provide the participant a written explanation of why they will not certify it within 10 business days. So many people have been waiting a really long time to get their budget certified. Also within 10 business days, they should review and attach the spending plan to the IPP, or if they have questions on any items, notify the participant in writing on changes requested in the plan, and then attach the remainder of the plan to the IPP. This is another really important piece for us because so many people are having their spending plans micromanaged. Or let's say they have a spending plan that is $50,000 and that there's a question about $500, they're not able to go into the self-determination program until everything's been what regional centers are calling approved. You should know regional centers do not approve your spending plans. They review them and then they attach them to the IPP. If there is something in the review that they have a question about, they can ask you the question, like, is this program you want to spend money on in an integrated setting? Are you with the general community in this program? So they can ask that question. If the answer is no, I'm not, then they can say, sorry, you have to be in an integrated setting. Here's another timeline, review and respond to participant requested changes to the spending plan within 5 business days, including reallocating funds in the participant's budget in the accounting department and notifying the FMS. We've been hearing from the FMSs that they are just waiting on hold from regional centers for months and months and months about even small changes in the spending plan. And so we've got to really change that. Provide payment to the FMS provider, not less than semi-monthly. We're hearing from the FMSs that sometimes they're not getting paid for 6 months from some regional centers. To me, that's unacceptable. You should know that 3 FMSs, 3 out of, I think there's 9 of them, 3 of them are no longer taking new clients. And we are about to have thousands of people enter the program and we're down 3 FMSs. And I can tell you that there's a whole lot of them who are on the verge of leaving as well if this next piece goes into law. And it says here that the FMS shall, which means they're required to, review the spending plan to ensure that goods and services eligible for federal financial participation are compliant with the home and community-based settings requirement and are not used to fund goods or services available through generic agencies. Let me translate that for you. So what they're saying is that the FMS has to look at every single thing on the spending plan and ask the questions to their clients. Where are you going to be? Are you going to be in the community? And did you ask Medi-Cal to pay for it first? Did you ask your insurance? Did you ask your school district? Can you imagine that level of work for every single item in a spending plan for the FMS? If this piece goes through, my prediction is they will all leave the state of California, all of them. And so remember I told you there were must-haves? This is a must-have for us. We're very, very concerned about this piece. Okay, so just the final piece that I want to talk about is the addition of the ombudsperson, which I talked to you about before. So Disability Rights California and Disability Voices United had legislation you guys have heard about, which was called Senate Bill 518 or 518, which created an ombudsperson, which is a person who is independent and looks at the self-determination program, receives complaints and concerns from the community, and then makes recommendations based on what they're hearing to the department, to regional centers, and to the legislature about how to improve the program. And so this language is in our bill, but is in the SB 518, but we know that bill is now in some form, hopefully this form, will be pushed into the budget. So it will become part of trailer bill language probably in the next day or two. So that is great news for us. All right, so I'm like dizzy from scrolling through my own computer. I'm sure there are 800, and I've taken way longer than I originally wanted to, but I realized that last week I didn't even get to go over all of these details because the language hadn't been published, and I'm not even going to answer a lot of your guys' questions, but I think that some of this will help. So let me go back to Molly's question, Ed, where she was asking about cost effectiveness of spending plan. So yeah, it's in there under spending plan too. They don't use the term spending plan, Molly, but they use the term the way the goods and services are purchased, and it is really, really problematic. And so that and that FMS piece and one other piece is kind of like our must-have.
Judy, I have a couple questions from chat. Would you like to address them now?
Yes, please.
One is, any idea who will train and or certify the independent facilitators under the new? Nope. Okay.
So no, they, there's so much in here that DDS is going to have to deal with after the law passes, or after the budget passes, I should say. It stresses me out to think about it. It stresses me out to think about it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judy. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that you were done. Thank you, Judy. Another question is, if someone wants to move from their group home, but they need help, can your staff in the self-determination program help you with the move out of that group home? Most, if not all, group homes will not help you get out of there or even give you the right information.
That's a great, great question. I love that question so much because I have to tell you, that in 2013, when we were writing this law, these are the people we thought about a lot. We thought about those individuals in really, really restricted settings who, if they could take the enormous budget that's being spent on them in these terrible settings, they could use them to move out and into the community in a way that works for them and that is person-centered. And so what if that person would be able to do with, support of their circle, like, maybe they have family or they have friends who can help them, is they would start the person-centered planning process with that $2,500. So they could hire an independent facilitator to help move them out of their home. They could do a person-centered plan. They could help identify those services and supports they'll need to be in the community. And then they will take the budget that they have, and if there's not enough in that congregate setting to support them, they could make the case for unmet need. Certainly, if you're in one of these crappy group homes, you have lots of unmet need. I should say, if you're in one of these intermediate care facilities, they're spending a whole lot of money on you, the state. And so you'll have a very nice budget when you leave there.
May I?
You know what? Ron Allen has his physical hand raised.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead, Ron. You can unmute now. There you go.
My question is to all of you. What if you've been on self-termination for 1 year, and then your landlord comes and tell you that your rent is going up to $800, can you go to self-termination and ask for help?
Oh, great question, Ron. So there's a few things that really under any circumstances you can't use your self-determination dollars for. And one of them is rent. You cannot pay rent with your self-determination dollars. You cannot pay for food that you live on, food that you live with. It doesn't mean that I've seen people get other kinds of food, like let's say you're taking a cooking class and there's food served within the cooking class, that's fine. But if you're food that, groceries that you live off of, you can't pay for that. And you can't pay for daily living things like, things that are really part of your own costs, like your clothing, unless it's clothing related to your job. Like, let's say you have to have a uniform or something like that. So yeah, go, Ron, you have a follow-up question to that? Go ahead.
My question was, who do you go to when you ask them for regional center to help you get Section 8. Because number one, my counselor told me I got to go to my budget lady, and my budget lady don't know anything about what Section 8 is, and right now I'm really getting upset because my July my rent is going up to $800, and I can't afford it.
I hear you, Ron, and this is frustrating that you're not getting the help you need, because one of the responsibilities of regional centers is to help you access what's called generic resources, and Section 8 is a generic resource.
Right.
And the reason why regional centers won't pay for your rent is because things like Section 8 exist in the world, and regional centers are supposed to help you with that.
I'm not asking the regional center to pay my rent.
No, you're asking them to advocate for you, right, Ron?
Right.
Right. They should absolutely be doing that.
Okay.
That should be their job.
4 years ago, I lived in a boarding care home, and my IPP, I told them that I want to move out on my own, and they, okay, you can on one condition: if you pass the 3 tests. Well, I passed with flying colors, but that's not the point. But then they were real nice, and they gave me a pass to from the regional center to Section 8. I got on right away. I didn't have to wait. What happened to that pass? Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Right. So, Ron, here's what I want to do, because I want to get back to some of the self-determination stuff, but I think what you're asking about is super important. And one of the things I want you to do is to reach out to Disability Rights California to see if they have a whole housing department that may be able to help you.
I figured that's who.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that, so for you all to know that in the self-determination program, there is a category called advocacy that you can hire an independent facilitator or another person to help you advocate for accessing those generic resources like Section 8. So I'm going to move on right now, Ron, but really important. Thank you, Ron.
Judy, I have a question in Spanish in the chat that I'd like Lorna to translate because I think it's important. I've just put it in the chat again. It's from Manuel Rodriguez.
Yeah, so in self-determination, your payments come only from a fiscal management service agency, an FMS. Those are the only people who pay for things. You cannot pay for yourself and then get paid back by the FMS. The FMS pays for everything. So your employee or your service provider will be registering with the FMS, either as an employee or as just getting the paycheck from them. And so you will definitely get that. We have a lot of people with hands raised. Can I turn to one right now, Ed?
Oh,
Can you address my question, Judy?
Oh, my
Jordan,
God.
you're going to address my question first.
Yes. Sorry, Jordan.
You want me to repeat it for people who may have missed it?
I didn't think I was looking at questions specifically on the trailer bill language, but we are clearly getting into general questions on self-determination. So, so Jordan, your question was about overtime, which is a really big issue. And so,
it's overtime, not based on it was overtime based on you hire. That's for people who didn't hear it. Again, exactly. I'm Jordan. And my overtime question was basically on if you hire a staff who then has a second job, and because that second job puts that staff either over 8 hours a day and or 40 hours a week, they're in overtime. If they are with the same agency like a GT and they're both in co-models, then it's overtime.
It
and
is.
One
Right.
recommendation was to take him out of an employee model and put him on a 1099, but that's a whole insurance thing
No,
that
you
they
can't
lose.
do
And it's
that.
just a,
No, you cannot. If they're an employee, the state of California will not allow them to become an independent contractor. So
it can't be a
that is
1099.
definitely illegal. But what you can do,
Oh, wow.
this is terrible to say, but my recommendation to you, if you need to have, so if you were the sole employer model, this would never be a problem, people, because when you're the sole employer model, the employer of record is the consumer, the participant. So the staff that my son has, my son is the employer. He has his own employer identification number. And so we're not gonna have we're not gonna ever have that problem. If you really wanna use the co-employer model, which I understand why you would, if it were me, honestly, Jordan, I would change FMSs to get around this problem. Because if the person is employed by GT or whoever it is, but by the FMS for a different client with that FMS, you're going to want to have a different FMS so you don't run into this problem. I know that's a pain in the butt and it's not fair, but the employer, whatever FMS it is, they cannot break the law. They have to provide overtime if they are the employer for more than one person.
And it can't be 1099, you said, okay.
No, definitely cannot be 1099. Yeah, that's very strict now. This is a law that was passed a couple of years ago in California. They're very, very strict about it now. I'm going to go to Miriam right now. Go ahead, Miriam.
Hi, I just wanted to say something about this little table you showed us, why they want to do the cost effectiveness thing now. I think the cost is higher because entering self-determination is like starting regional center service from scratch. It's like going from zero to everything. You know, when you start services, you look into everything you do. If you have a young child, you do speech, behavior, OT, PT, whatever. And this is kind of like the same. That's why I think the numbers are high. Over time, this will level out. You know, you start self-determination, it's a new program, you look into unmet needs, you try to get a bigger budget. But I think it will level out. You know, once this goes on for a while, you know, it's going to be normal for people and there's no stumbling to get more money into the budget. I think that's something that needs to be mentioned too.
Yeah, for sure. Does anybody else have a response on that one? But you know, I think that, you know, in some of this, you should know that regional centers are doing things because they just don't have any direction from up above. And in other places, they're doing things to be more controlling because they're not facing the shift in what the self-determination program is. So, and the expenses, by the way, Jan is reminding me of the way the expenses worked in the pilot. It's true that the expenses went up and then they leveled off over time. So I also was saying to them today that, you know, I think regional centers are concerned about approving certain budgets because they don't want to get audited. And now that DDS is, you know, focusing on these expenses, we're facing that. But this is why we want some research. We need some data. Like, you can't just look at these general things for 360 people. We need more complete data. All right, Eunice, go ahead. Eunice Valle?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. My question is, I just recently, as of April 1st, was in self-determination, was approved. We were approved, and the regional center just recently denied 2 of our services that we put in the spending plan. At the beginning, they say, well, one was the Disneyland Disneyland to be able to take her there where there are other people that they are the same age but not physically disabled, so she can be in a different environment and to help her. And the other one is the squeeze machine, which it will help Jasmine suit her the need that she has for very powerful, kind of hurting pain that she gets pressing, and she presses in the couches and she presses, against things because she needs the pressure. So we try to get the squeeze machine. So they both were denied, and I had the paperwork because I don't accept that, and I'm going to go to a fair hearing. My question is that at the beginning, they say that the Disneyland was a parent responsibility. But then in the paperwork, they change it and they say that no, because Disneyland is a location, not a program. So they are kind of confusing in things like that. And then they say that both of those they are not acceptable by the self-determination law. So I don't know. They say they are not allowable to the self-determination program waiver.
Yeah.
So I'm going to.
Yeah, so Eunice, let me just interrupt you real quick because I want to make sure to get to all the questions.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So, DDS has not issued like a list of things that cannot be paid for. This is something that is, a lot of people are calling for this list to be created. The FMSs, the regional centers want this list so that they just know. But as many of you who've been involved in the self-determination program can attest, is like, I hate lists. I hate lists of independent facilitators. I hate lists of service providers. I hate lists of what you can and cannot do, because how is a list person-centered? And what is good for one person is not necessarily good for another. And so what I've said to people is that it is really important about how you talk about the services you are at and goods and services you are asking for, and how that meets your IPP goals. Remember that your services are not about your person-centered plan. Your person-centered plan is about your hopes and dreams, everything in the world, some of which costs money and some of which doesn't. So it is not about, your services are not about your person-centered plan, they're about your IPP. So if your IPP goals are written where it says, we'll be out in the community with 2 friends on a regular basis, and not sitting at home all the time or something like that. And you say that the only 2 friends my daughter has, the only place that she will ever be able to go to with people who do not have disabilities is Disneyland. That's literally the only outlet she has to integrate. That is the case that you make, right? You don't make the case that Disneyland in itself is a destination. It is a parent responsibility. It is all those things they're claiming, because you need to make the case of why it meets an IPP goal. And so that is your job in fair hearing to make that case. When it comes to a squeeze machine, I would have never called it a squeeze machine in the first place. I would call it, calming equipment. I would call it, something that is related to her sensory system, because that's what we know the squeeze machine is. I know that they're saying there's no scientific research on it, which, by the way, is not true. There is scientific research on the squeeze machine, and I would love to get a testimonial from folks on that. Temple Grandin can testify at your fair hearing. That would intimidate the hell out of them. But to have an occupational therapist talk about what the importance is of someone to be able to have that proprioceptive input on a regular basis as much as you can control it, I mean, that's the way you argue about it. So while I don't want to get into too much of the details of what Disneyland or the squeeze machine is, what I'm saying to everybody here is you need to make the case for every single one of your expenses, all right? And that case needs to be made in the IPP, not in the spending plan. So as you are thinking, and this is where having a good independent facilitator really helps. So for those of you out there who are independent facilitators, you better be thinking about this, okay? And I know that many of you are not very experienced yet as independent facilitators. I get it. This is a really new program, but you need to be making sure that the IPP goals relate directly to that spending plan. It's critically important because that's the way the law is written.
Right.
Thanks, Eunice. I'm going to go on to all right. BM. Okay. It's so hot in my office. The sun is beating in. I don't know what to do to make myself cooler. Sorry, I'm sweating.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi,
Yes.
I'm so sorry. You may have already addressed this, but since I came in really late, and unfortunately, I may be asking a question that already been answered. Is there any kind of more concrete date of when the SDP program will officially roll out?
Yes, it is rolling out on July 1st, 2021, in just a few weeks.
Okay, so July 1st. Is there?
I was going to show you guys the trailer bill language.
Is there a DDS mandate of regional centers to start their orientations by a certain date?
They're not yet. Not yet. So what I was saying before is that there's what's called trailer bill language or budget language that's being discussed, and it's going to be decided on and finalized by June 15th. So we're just a few weeks away. And in there, it talks about the July 1st date, and in there, it talks about orientations. So okay. I'm gonna try to find the trailer bill language. Is this it? No, it's different. I have so many different trailer bill languages I'm focusing on. This is it. Is this it? Self-determination sports. Here we go. All right, I'm going to put, so for those of you who are having issues with your regional center not believing things, here is the link. I'm putting it in the chat. This is the trailer bill language. Even though we don't like everything that's in there and it hasn't passed into law yet, what you can tell them is that in the first paragraph, it talks about July 1st being the start date, and there is no one out there saying that that's not going to happen.
And one last question: do you know if the person-centered planner, the $2,500 fund, will be approved for everybody?
We won't know till June 15th, but the way the budget process works is that if everybody agrees with something, it's going to happen. If the governor agrees, the legislature agrees, there's no opposition from the community, then it's going to happen. So that July 1st, everybody agrees on, and the $2.5 million for people to get that $2,500, everybody agrees on that. So it will certainly happen. All right. So everybody start looking for an independent facilitator to help you now. Carl. Hi, Carl.
Thank you so much for your help.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Carl. Oh, wait, I have to help you unmute. There you go.
Hi, hello again.
Hi, Carl.
Last week, I mentioned that my oldest son had transitioned to self-determination, and it's been one of the best years of his adult life. I want to make a comment because you brought up the issue of cost effectiveness. I have a younger son who is also intellectually disabled and deaf, and we provided services before there was self-determination under AB 637. I don't know if you were familiar with that program, but we provided services. It was the old-fashioned version of self-determination, and we provided services for 14 years under AB 637 as family, and the cost of my son's services were $5,000 a month. The regional center terminated us as a family provider and transition services to their vendor, and services increased to $30,000 a month. So we went from $5,000 a month to $30,000 a month under regional center services. This is all documented. Okay, the reason I'm bringing this up now is because you haven't talked about vendors thwarting self-determination.
Yeah.
My son, my youngest son, wanted to move to self-determination. He went through the training, and then the vendor started to work on him to prevent him from moving to self-determination.
Because they're making
the regional
so much money.
center,
yeah.
The regional center got involved, DDS got involved, and DDS has petitioned to become my youngest son's conservator. And that is now in probate court. Bottom line for my comment today, beware, parents, of DDS, because if you become a thorn in the side of DDS, they have the ultimate power to become your adult child's conservator.
Oh.
So I have posted this on my blog. There's a link in chat, and I just thank you for giving me a couple of minutes to bring this to the attention of other parents. We are still—
Carl, could you put your contact information in the chat for Ed? Because Ed, I'd really love you to follow up with Carl on this, because it gave me chills down my spine.
I will do that. Okay. And I'll be here next week. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because we work a lot on conservatorship too. So this really upsets me when I hear of regional centers or DDS trying to pull conservatorship either away from families, or if a person is unconserved, like my son. Believe me, I think about my son is unconserved. He uses supported decision-making, and I cause lots of problems for regional centers and DDS. I'm married to a lawyer, and if anybody tries to screw with us, well, you better be careful. But I think about this, Carl. Oh my God. Okay, Tina. Hi, Tina.
Can you hear me?
You're a little bit underwater.
Hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay, I have a question. Can you explain the difference between an IPP and a PCP and how that works in self-determination?
Sure.
I don't quite understand that. In the chat.
So the person-centered planning process and a written person-centered plan really focuses on the individual's hopes and dreams in their life. So my son has given me permission to talk about certain things, not everything in his life. And so I can tell you that my son's person-centered plan, his first one when he was 15, so 9 years ago, the number one thing that came out of his plan was that he wanted to spend more time with his grandfather. That cost the regional center $0. It just made sure that every Monday after he had this class, which was right next door to where my dad lived, that he would show up and he would have dinner with his grandpa. So that doesn't need to be an IPP goal. That doesn't need to cost any money. But to my son, it was his number one important thing in his life when he was 15 years old. When we gave him a list of all the things, he did not care about pre-employment skills. He did not care about safety in the community. He didn't care about all that crap that regional centers cared about. He cared about having salad bar at the retirement home with his grandpa. And so that's what the person-centered plan is about, guys. So you may have Disney. So you should know that my son also loves Disneyland. He goes back in the day when we had annual passes, he went all the time. But we would never put that in his IPP or ask for the funding, because there is no IPP goal that you could remotely relate to why my son wants to go to Disneyland. He wants to go to Disneyland because it's his passion. He perseverates in Disneyland. He has his order of rides. He must go on Roger Rabbit first. That's not community integration, because he has his goal. He wants to go on his rides. It is not about meeting other people. It's not about making friends. It is completely about his love of Disneyland. To me, it would be the same as buying video games in a spending plan. You shouldn't be putting that in a spending plan either. But there are some people for which going to Disneyland would be in an IPP goal. So IPP goals are, I just had my son's IPP yesterday to go into his second year. And I didn't even remember what his goals were from last year, but they were things like preparing to move out, so gaining interdependent skills to move out, or they were, social skills, getting together with a friend once a week, so there are all those kinds of goals. And so, I just need to make sure that everything in the spending plan relates to those goals. So if he has in his spending plan, he has a workout coach, that workout coach relates to that IPP goal of improve his health. So we have just a general goal of improving his personal health. That is not the same as a PCP goal. My son would never have improving his health as one of his person-centered planning goals. He could give a crap about his health. And so, they're really, really different, everybody. And so maybe one of his person-centered planning goals is not necessarily to lose weight, but it's to, hike more because he likes hiking. So that's where we push that hiking into, the health piece. All right. So it's another way you may have never heard of the medical model versus the social model of disability. The medical model is about people's problems and their deficits and how to fix them. And the social model is about supporting them and building on their strengths. The medical model is the IPP. The social model is the PCP. So they are really different documents. We're at 6 o'clock. I need to do a quick check-in with Lorna because we are committed to interpreting in Spanish all of our programs. And if she needs to leave, I need to leave. I have another probably 10 minutes that I can stay until I need to go get my son some dinner. Lorna, can I ask you, are you available maybe till 6:15? Okay. All right. So I'm going to take now, I'll basically take one more question, maybe two. Okay. So Tiffany, you are next. Oops, sorry. Okay, there you go.
Hi. I was just wondering, I actually attended the Harbor Regional's parent orientation yesterday. And I just have to say that I actually gave this Zoom info for today to everybody who participated because I think that orientation was overwhelming and confusing. One of the questions I asked during orientation, and I was very shocked at the answer. So I want to ask you and see if I get the same answer. The question was basically, since the budget is based on the previous year's expenditure, and yes, I do understand unmet needs and all can be added. But my concern is especially due to inflation and because of COVID, the cost of a lot of things has gone up. Mm-hmm. So because just about everybody costing more, charging more money because their cost has gone up. Mm-hmm. So my question was, how do we get inflation or price cost adjustment? And they said, no, you cannot. So is that true?
Everything is based on the cost in the traditional system, not costs in your spending plan. So at my son's IPP yesterday, his budget went up by a few $1,000s just because the rates had increased. So remember that in the traditional system, they have rates. We don't have that in the self-determination program. So if you receive like respite, let's say that rate is $20 an hour. I know the respite worker doesn't make that much, but the extra money is for administrative and taxes and labor costs and stuff. So let's say it's $20 an hour. It was $20 an hour last year. This year, it might be $22 an hour. So one of the things you need to ask for, and sometimes those rates increase in the middle of your spending year.
Okay.
Okay. You are allowed to go back and ask for an IPP and ask for your budget to be adjusted if in fact rates have increased. Here's a really good example, everybody, and I only have 5 more minutes, I know. We are calling once again for the 5th year in a row for the state to restore social and recreational program funding, which was cut in 2009. This year, the state they're rolling in money. I mean, they have so much money, and yet the governor still hasn't called for that. We think we have a chance, and what we want to do is if we can get social rec restored, remember, you can pay for it in the spending plan in self-determination. You just can't add that money to your budget amount. If in fact that is going to be allowed in the traditional system, you'll be able to go back and say, okay, I would be purchasing X, Y, or Z kind of program, and then that money would be added to your budget. So whatever happens, we should be paying a lot of attention to what happens in this budget process outside of the self-determination program. There's also what's called a differential, that people who are bilingual, if you require a bilingual service provider, they get paid more. There's going to be training programs for service providers. So if your service provider goes through this training program, you will get that increase in your budget, okay? So I'm going to just go to the next one. Thanks for that, Tiffany. Debbie, go ahead. You're our last questioner. Where'd Debbie go? I don't know what happened to Debbie. I feel like she left, or I hope to God I didn't kick her out, but I don't think I did. I just asked her to unmute. There's Debbie. Let me see. Can I get you back, Debbie?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. I'll make it quick. I just attended our regional service orientation on SDP, and they said that the director of program services said it takes about 3 to 6 months to transition from traditional to SDP. And I just wanted to hear, was that off a little bit, or is that really true?
It takes some people a month. It takes some people 3 years. It is, you guys should be setting records. If you're coming to the SDP Connect every week, you should be setting records for moving in. The most important thing you guys can do right now, before July 1st, is to find the person-centered planner you want to help move you in. There are people who are highly experienced. There are people who are not so experienced. That's fine. You find someone that you connect to and you like, and start the person-centered planning process now, because you don't have to wait till July 1st to start person-centered planning. Have your person-centered plan. Your planner can bill that, it's not going to be $2,500 just for a person-centered plan, but they can bill whatever it costs, after July 1st. So let's get, everybody here should be getting into the program now. Go ahead and pick your folks. You should be thinking about your hopes and dreams. Your child should be thinking about their hopes and dreams. You should be thinking about who is it that you want to have at your person-centered planning meeting. And think about what time of day. If it's in person. These things take time, and these are the preparations you can do before July 1st. You can have that planning meeting. You can start getting you can ask for your last 12 months of expenses from your regional center right now. Ask an act to provide it to you. So ask for that right now. So there's lots of stuff you guys can do. So I want to thank everybody. I know that some of you have asked for for our trailer bill language. I will email that to you, or what I might do is actually email one copy to Ed and ask her to send it out to you guys tomorrow. And then we will likely be back again. We usually do SDP Connect every other week, but there's just so much happening that we might go back to our weekly. If in fact Lorna is available. Let me look at next week. I think I could do it next week. So we'll keep you guys posted, and looking forward. You know what we'll do is we'll send out an email who you guys can pressure on this language to. Okay, we'll send, make sure you're on our mailing list. All right. Thank you, Lorna, for this, and we look forward to seeing you guys. Take care. Bye.